You know, when you say something in your life or on camera, in my case, and the universe just has to come along and show you just how wrong you were? Yeah, about that. Roll VT. In fact, every trip for the Kia suggested maintenance has consisted of me driving it to them looking at the car, offering to rotate the tyres, which so far has been unnecessary because I've always taken it in shortly after a tyre swap anyway, and then them returning the car to me with no bill. So that has been delightful. So as some of you who watch the channel know, I have been on vacation. Went for maybe 1,000 miles of driving around Canada. Probably not even that far, maybe 800 or 900. And I went up to the beautiful island of Vancouver, BC, not the city, the island. And I had a wonderful time. And throughout it, the car was flawless, except for this one minor thing, which was something that had happened a few weeks before we left. And that was, well, the passenger side mirror. See, I got into the car one day. I'd just been to a local computer store, actually, just to get some bits and pieces for fixing my Z88. And unlocked the car, got in, drove off. And as I glanced in the mirror, I thought, that's funny. The mirror is not quite pointing the right way. Oh well, I'll look at it when I get home. So I got home, and then this happened. Yeah, see, the mirror stopped working properly. It would open sometimes, but not all the time, and then it would close sometimes, but not all the time. Interestingly, it was at its most reliable if I just let it do it automatically, but if I hit the lock button or the unlock button, or I, well, made the mistake of going up to the car, not opening it, and then hit the open button, yeah, then it would just stick in a kind of halfway position. And that wasn't very safe. Eventually, what I opted to do in the temporary fix was just to wait until it opened fully and then switch it off so it was stuck open. And I took it to the garage and they looked at it and they diagnosed that the mirror was broken. It would take a couple of weeks to get the part in and get it sprayed. So I waited for that to happen, got the part, and it was booked in for when I came back from vacation. Okay, so apart from that, everything was fine. And throughout the trip, charging, perfect. Driving, not a problem. Yeah, it did its job. The one thing that was a little odd is the seat heater didn't cool. Well, the seat cooler didn't cool quite as well as I remembered, but hey. So when we got back, I'd booked it in advance. Yeah. When we got back, I pulled onto the driveway. I literally pulled onto the driveway. I know it sounds like I'm making this up. We did our whole holiday. We drove back off the ferry. We drove into Port Townsend. We drove down from Port Townsend to where we live. Pulled into the driveway, went to unlock the charging door. Well, went to open it. It should have been unlocked. Wouldn't open. I was stood there for about 15 minutes trying to lock and unlock it. I hoped and thought maybe the manual release, which releases the handle if it's locked to a charger and there's been some sort of charger fault and it won't unlock. I hope that might do it. No, turns out, and I've checked with Kia, that doesn't do it. The door is electronically locked, and if it doesn't unlock, you are stuck. Now, thankfully, because the car was pretty well charged, I wasn't too anxious about charging it, but I did want it to charge. So I spent about 20 minutes out there, and eventually I discovered that if you gave it some percussive maintenance, then it would in fact open. You had to do it in a specific order. You had to hit lock, hit the door, and then it would unlock on the next unlock cycle and you could open it. So I booked it in. I'd booked it in ahead of time to be like a couple of weeks after I got back, but I called them up and I was like, hey, this cannot stand. I need the car. It's my working vehicle. And so Kia booked it in. And of course, during its stay with Kia, where I left it with them for, I think, 4 days, the charge door worked perfectly. not a single problem, which was funny because when I'd taken it in to show them just before getting it booked in, it had misbehaved. So the mechanic was like, it seems to have fixed itself if it starts happening again. Except while he said that, oh my wonderful car, it did it again. And so at that first service visit, we had a couple of things done. So all of this work was under warranty because it turned out a few things decided to go wrong. So the outside mirror, that is a $270-ish part, although I've seen them down about $150 sometimes, but the quoted price would be $270-ish. That they installed. They had to get it sprayed because the body of the mirror has to match the car, and it turns out there are several different variants and Kia doesn't keep a record of them. So that was a case of getting the car matched. Like they called and said, hey, is this bit of your car black and is this bit blue? And I said yes, and then they said, okay, we'll get it sprayed. It took a bit longer than they'd expected because unfortunately when they got it back from the spray shop, the part wasn't of the standard that they wanted. Excuse me, it's a fly. And then I mentioned about the seat. Unfortunately, that was an entirely me problem. Or fortunately, it was an entirely me problem. Apparently a small paper bag had managed to sneak its way under the seat, and I just mentioned it in passing. It turned out it was blocking the fan, which probably explains that. So, me doing me. And then we have the charge door. Now, because it broke that time while they had the car there, so they'd had it there 4 days and they'd hoped that they would be able to order the part and get it in and install it if it had shown up the problem, but it didn't. Now fortunately, when I booked it in for this, I kept the second service visit booked. I didn't just cancel it, so I had one a couple of weeks later, so we'll come to that in a second. And then the other thing that came up, and this had been something that had been really intermittent while I'd had the car, like since the couple of weeks after I'd picked it up, I'd very occasionally hear this kind of whooshing noise as I turned the steering wheel, only at low speeds. When I got back from the vacation, it was happening all the time. So finally I was like, you know what, I'm just going to call them and add this in. So I added it in and they diagnosed the rubbing noise is due to a small bearing, which needed a small bearing pack to be replaced. Then we have the standard, we checked your car and everything was otherwise fine, and that's very odd. That's very odd. They checked the seat cooler and said it was 86 degrees, which is weird, but I want my seat cooler at 86 Fahrenheit. I want it colder than that. Anyway, so then visit number 2 rolled around. So at the end of that service, they gave the car back to me, and while they were showing me the car to say that the door worked, the charging door wouldn't open, and I demonstrated that you have to hit it and then it opens, and he said, that's ridiculous. I'm sorry, we'll get that fixed. But you know, it was awkward and annoying that I had to wait those 4 days without the car because they didn't have a loaner available, and then had to take it back again a second time to get the same problem fixed that I said was there and that they had actually observed, but the mechanic hadn't observed it, which was annoying. But anyway, so then we go back, second time round. Multi-point inspection, excellent. Then we have the intermittent charge door issue. Now this is interesting because the panel on the front is entirely removable, the little cover panel, which is painted. So this time I didn't have to get it painted. This one was about a $160 part. That was replaced pretty quickly and fairly simply. Bob's your uncle, we now have a functional charge door again. Hallelujah! And the bearing pack came in, so they replaced the bearing. And that is the end of the story. At least, hopefully, it's the end of the story. When I pulled out of the garage, because, you know, that's how these things work, there was a strange ting noise from the front suspension. Now, I've had it a couple of times since they did a multi-point inspection. I'm hoping it's just like a stone or something that's caught somewhere. I can't see anything amiss, but if it keeps happening, then I think we'll be on our third, which is embarrassing. So we are actually over the 50,000 mile mark now, and these are really minor issues. There's nothing that would hugely concern me. It was irritating, I grant, not to be able to open the charge door. And as is often the case with dealer visits, it's more irritating when the car works fine in front of them when you know it hasn't been working before then. Thankfully, the guy that I was working with at the garage was very happy to be like, we know it's faulty, we'll keep it recorded as faulty, we just need it to brake more. But actually then it broke anyway, so it didn't matter. So after my little voyage into the garage experience, do I still recommend the Niro EV? Yeah, I certainly do. Like, these are small problems that crop up on vehicles from time to time. If you hop into the owners forum for any vehicle, from Tesla to Toyota, from Ford to, I would say, Faraday Future, but they only have one car delivered, don't they? Last I checked. But anyway, if you pop into the owners forum for any car with a reasonable number of sales, you'll find minor issues that crop up from time to time. I do think it's a shame that the whole mirror had to be replaced for one stripped gear and you couldn't just clean out and replace that gear. But at the end of the day, am I desperately upset about it? No. I'd rather keep my car on the road. I mean, these are stupid little faults, but the general point is that pretty much all of the parts for this car are still available. They're all nice and cheap, and they're all things that even I could get off the shelf, which I really like. No teleprompter today because there's a great big glowing ball of light in the sky. I'm not sure where that's come from, but I do have my phone, so. On that note, we are done with today's video. If you have comments, drop us a polite note in the Discord chat room on Mastodon, or if you're a Patreon supporter, in the comments there. You can also, if you want to venture there, go down into the comments section. If you want more, subscribe, hit the bell, and follow the links below to regularly support us with a YouTube membership or a Patreon subscription. You'll also find links to our Ko-fi, Bitcoin, and Swag store, as well as that aforementioned Mastodon server. Scrolling by on my right is our amazing list of charged up supporters, and shoutouts go to our V to G Patreon supporters: Alan Tupper, Andrew Martin, Bennett Elder, Brophy Wolf, Chris Maxwell, Cyprian Laplace, Dan Blair, Gordon C, Hay Esker, John Trammell, Kyle Fox, Mark Eggleton, Peter Dillinger, Regine Fellows, Sean Tucker, Stefan Fremgen, Stephen Williams, Tesla in the Gong, Paul Bricknell, Tony Moss, Kyle Hodgson, Chris Ascenter, Denny Hyde, Lance Charles, Linda Irish, Mike Weeder, and Paul Nelson. And finally, a big thanks to our off-grid supporters: Paul Conway, Kevin Burrbridge, Stephen O'Donoghue, Jim Burness, Robert Flannery, Aaron Han, Ellery Hensley, Rory Litwin, JP Fagerback, Dave Kitchen, Andrew Glenn, Anonymous Freak, Chris and Michael Johnson, CPU Freak 101, Eric Knack, Joe Bresney, John Henderson, Laura Reynolds, Marcel Ward, Matthew Drobnek, Nigel S, Reggie Watts, Will Graylan, and, of course, Ian. Don't forget we make videos every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday on the main channel, plus Sunday on Take 2. And with that, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. I will see you soon, and as always, keep evolving.